The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, was not directed by James Wan, as was the case with the prior two installments, but was instead directed by Michael Chavez, the director of probably the worst movie in the Conjuring universe, that being The Curse of La Llorona. I don't know what facilitated this choice, but I think it's a major step down. It's easily the worst of the three films. It's not without some merit, but it feels too far removed from the first two installments. And I think the big downgrade is in the script. I don't know what role Juan had in the writing of the prior two films, but with this one, it feels very barren. There's only so much you can actually do with the Devil Made Me Do It trial that they had to instead pivot to a completely, it's not completely unrelated, but the case itself becomes a background element. It's part of a larger thing going on that has to try and instead explore this occultist. And you essentially get a 2-hour film in which the Warrens are in a standoff with a Satanist. She's not even credited with a name, she's just called the occultist. That's it. That's not good. We don't have a real sense of what her powers are. We don't have a sense of her motivations. Obviously, like I said, not even a name. It's just like, here she is. She's your risk, your threat here. The first two films, you had all kinds of lore, right? You had Bathsheba. You knew the witch's curse and the witch's spirit. And even though you had other spirits there, you understood she was the primary antagonist that you were dealing with. You then, in the second one, and in other films in which this demon appeared, had Valak. And that was a lot to work with. I don't remember the old man's spirit, the name of the old man's spirit from the second film, but that one also had a real sense of identity. You connected to the spirit in the sense that you could understand their motives, what was going on behind the scenes and everything. You don't have that in this film because, yes, there is a demon in this film summoned by the occultist, but you don't know its name. You don't know what kind of demon it is. It's just the demon. It's just there. And it's a really mixed bag. The film is actually so lazy with regard to establishing motives for the occultist that it flat out has a character tell you, a character who has studied the occult for 9 years, tell you that Satanists want nothing. They just want to sow chaos and discord. That's such a lazy answer. And the fact that the character, the actual occultist herself, doesn't tell you or express her motives or her wants. You assume that the trade-off here, because she does have powers, you assume the trade-off must be that, okay, she conducts these rituals, these curses, places these curses that result in the deaths of people. The individual has to be possessed by the demon to commit murder, and then they must kill themselves. Well, there's some questions here. We need the child, the lover, and the man of God. 3 souls to complete the ritual. And at that point, it's suggested, I guess, that the occultist will be rewarded with power, a power boost, something to that effect. We don't ever see it play out, however. It's a situation where the opening of the film starts out with this little boy, David Glatzel, and his exorcism. It's a botched exorcism. Conveniently, all the characters are thrown aside except for Ed, whom the demon in the little boy's body targets. The demon nearly stops his heart, gives him a massive heart attack, which puts him out of capacity for a couple of days, but not before he sees the transfer of the demon from the boy, the 8-year-old, the child in the rituals and what it calls for, to basically his older sister's boyfriend, Arnie Johnson. Like, he witnesses, Ed does, the entire exchange. He's the only one that sees or hears Arnie inviting the demon into his body, saying, leave him and take me, leave him and take me. And then it does. And somehow, while Ed is in the hospital, the family of the boy just goes about, like, the next day, like, let's have a cookout to celebrate. Never mind the fact that Arnie obviously knows something happened. He went awestruck and collapsed. Like they're walking around through the kitchen getting like potato salad for their cookout, walking past demonic claw marks on the walls. And no one does anything. No one's like it's a weird denial that feels disconnected to me. But Arnie starts seeing stuff, he's hearing stuff, he's being compelled by the spirit of, it's not even a spirit, it's just the occultist, like messing with his mind, pushing his sanity, I guess to make him more vulnerable to the demonic possession, but that doesn't even make sense because we already saw the demon go into his body. So why does she have to mess with him? Why does she have to get him with like jump scares and things of that nature? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But eventually, Ed wakes up from his comatose state, immediately tells everyone what he saw. They try to contact Arnie and them saying, hey, you're still in danger. He's possessed by the spirit. But it's too late. Arnie has committed a murder because he was hallucinating, seeing visions, believing he was attacking a demonic presence that was attacking him and his soon-to-be fiance instead of actually just a random guy. I think it's his fiance's boss, Bruno, who's kind of just like a drunk idiot that runs the boarding house that they have for dogs. So in this, you get a situation where he says, obviously, oh, well, the devil made me do it. The Warrens come in and they're consulting with his legal advising team. And they're like, well, no one's ever defended or claimed innocence on the grounds of demonic possession before. And the Warrens are like, aha, it has happened. Once in England, and this year, and once here. To which the attorney basically says, okay, well, no one's ever done it successfully. And he's like, well, I can convince you that it's real. Come to my house tonight. Come to our house tonight, and we'll let you meet Annabelle. We'll show you the museum and all the creepy hoodoo, and you'll understand and you'll believe us. And she goes with it because it makes no sense. She first says, like, oh, well, if you can't convince me it's real, how are you going to convince a jury? And then he offers, like, to take her to their house to meet Annabelle. And my thought is, like, it's not like he's going to be able to take the jury to his house. It's not like he's going to be able to convince them the same way. So why does that move the needle? Never mind. It doesn't matter. The point is, while Arnie is awaiting trial, they're given a little bit of time to figure it out. And they start by going to the house where the little boy was initially possessed, where he encountered the spirit for the first time. And they find that underneath the room he first encountered the demon, there was a witch's totem, which is serious hoodoo and all that. Like, it's a big deal. They've never even seen anything like it. The Warrens haven't. So they have to consult this retired priest who apparently spent years studying the occult. And he's the one that tells us in a lazy roundabout way that, like, oh, Satanists want nothing. They just want to sow chaos. Okay, and even the Warrens are saying, like, there's got to be a motive, right? There's got to be a reason. And he just kind of waves it off like, they want nothing. So they go, and they eventually find out that, like, all right, well, there's another case over here. I don't even remember exactly how they got on this thread, but there's another case hundreds of miles away of a girl who went missing after supposedly killing her childhood friend. And, like, these are college-age girls at this point. They're not children. So I wonder then, like, well, what purpose are they serving? Because, as I said, if the ritual has to have the three victims, the lover, the child, and the man of God, commit murder and then kill themselves, first of all, isn't that already a fault with having the demon willingly transfer from the kid to Arnie when the kid hasn't killed anybody yet? Like, how is that still checking the box? Or is Arnie being repackaged, essentially, as the lover? Does that make the college-age girl and I don't know if she occurred before the events of the opening scene. I think it actually was, because they tell us she's been missing for weeks. So, like, is she then repackaged as the lover? Like, is she now repackaged as the child? Because she's still college age. She's not a child. She's a grown adult at this point. It's unclear. It doesn't follow its own rules very well. Spoiler, there will be spoilers in this as well. But spoiler, Ed Warren is the man of God that gets targeted. So they find this, and they have to get like this piece of information from this other police department, but they won't just give it over. And so they have to use Lorraine's clairvoyance as a party trick, effectively, to help solve what happened here. And so she can take them immediately to where the missing girl's body was, where like reenact basically the murder through her own gift. She essentially sees herself in the shoes of the girl committing the murder with the pair of scissors, I think it is, or maybe it's a knife. Comes out of the demonic possession, realizes what she's done, and flees, and then either throws herself off a cliff or doesn't. The whole thing of this film is it feels disconnected to me. It uses certain elements when it's convenient to it, but you might already notice, as we're over here hundreds of miles away, we spend a decent chunk of the middle of this film following this other case. And while, yes, it has a tie back to the devil made me do it situation, being it's part of the same three-pronged curse, it's still disconnected in that it's not actually exploring anything more of that. It's just like, oh, put a pin in that. Arnie is going to continue to see things, hear things, compelling him to kill himself now, but we're over here. We're going to try and solve this, and we'll meet back up with you when we can, when we solve the occultist thing. And so they basically eventually find the body of this girl, but not before Lorraine nearly throws herself off the cliff, which forces Ed, with his now bad heart, to chase after her, and he's seeing double, and he's about to collapse, might have another heart attack. He doesn't, but it keeps setting like this notion that, oh, Ed keeps forgetting to take his medicine, whether it's a conscious thing or not, whether he's like, oh, I don't need it, or whether he just keeps straight up forgetting it. It's not really clear. But they find the girl's body, or rather, they figure out where it is, and then the police find it when they have to dredge the lake. And that leads to eventually a scene wherein they go to the morgue because they realize, like, hey, we formed a connection before when I was making contact with, I think it was the boy, David Glatzel, or it could have been Arnie, but one of the victims or intended victims. She was able to form a connection and figure some stuff out. So she's like, hey, if I touch the dead body, as gross as that is, probably sacrilegious, whatever as that might be, if I do that, then maybe I can find out more. Well, she sees the occultist, and she sees the occultist trying to influence Arnie, trying to manipulate him into killing himself in the prison, and Lorraine is able to influence the scene. She's not just witnessing it like a ghost in a room, like seeing it, but unseen. She actually directly like has like a pulse of power of some kind that knocks the ritual that the witch has set up on her altar away, and it stops the connection, which saves Arnie, allows him to stop cutting his wrists because the worthless prison priest was told, hey, put him on 24-hour suicide watch, and then proceeded to give him a glass vial of holy water to protect himself, which of course he smashes and then starts cutting while he's possessed. And his eyes are glassed over as well, which means, like, why does this ritual work if it's a demon that's making him commit the murder, and then it's a witch or an occultist that's making him kill himself? Why does that fulfill the quota? I digress. The problem with Lorraine being able to do this is that her influence goes two ways. She shows her power in a way she's never done before, not just seeing, but being able to like exert her will in a way that like impacts the room around her, stops the witch, not just like that she heard her. It like a burst of power blew out the candles and knocked over the stuff she was working with. And we've never seen that before. But what's troubling is the occultist can see her. And she says, Ed, the connection works both ways. The occultist and her, their only conversation, one of the only lines even given to the occultist, is basically like, who are you and how did you do that? And Lorraine basically says, God has shown you to me. To which the occultist replies, then your God has damned you. And through their connection, the occultist is somehow able to raise a dead body from the morgue to try and attack Lorraine. Ed has to then dive and tackle Lorraine out of the way, thereby breaking the connection with the dead body that she was using, the dead girl victim that was the connection to the occultist. And the body, once again, deanimates and cracks its head, but like it shows the connection is two ways. We've never seen that before. And it really gets to the point of frustration for me that we don't, not only do we not know the cultist's name, we don't know her motive, we don't know the limits of her power, we don't have any idea anything about her. She is a blank slate of just given to us and told like evil, and I say evil in quotations, obviously evil, but like that's the only character. Is like, oh, she's evil and she wants power, so she's doing these things. Nothing is explored, and it's frustrating. So, Lorraine says that the occultist now knows who they are. Convenient, the occultist needed a man of God, and now Ed Warren and Lorraine have shown themselves to her. So she puts a witch's totem in their house. Ed initially has a scene where he's hallucinating. He's trying to attack Lorraine. Again, trying to go at her with like a knife or a pair of scissors. It sets up with another one of these situations where it's very convenient when they use Ed's faulty heart to their advantage. Like, I know in real life, Ed Warren, I think he died, actually, I should say think, not I know, died of a heart attack and did have a cane. And so I think that that angle of the story was just trying to implement it to kind of tie it back to reality a little better. But it's still used only when it's convenient, right? When he's trying to run through the forest after Lorraine, who's hallucinating and about to throw herself off a cliff, it's a huge deal. When they keep telling us, oh, he forgot to take his medicine, oh, he's going to have an issue, he's going to have an episode, it's a big deal. But we eventually get to a scene, and I'll build to it a little bit more here, some more of the foundation. You have, again, more scenes where Arnie is seeing things in the now infirmary of the prison, and for some reason his girlfriend's allowed to be in there with him, even though he's like no, he's not unrestrained, he breaks free. He's levitating, he's breaking glass, demons are like appearing to him, but like no one else sees the demons, but like he's clearly doing supernatural shit and no one's reacting to it. Not the people observing the infirmary, not the guards, no one. It's really weird. The priest is there, no one's reacting, no one's making note of anything. Like, and when I say reacting, I mean like backing up what they saw later on. It's just kind of like, oh, that was weird. Moving on. While all this is going on, Lorraine tries to go back once again to consult the retired priest about the occult. Shocker of all shockers, apparently the occultist is his daughter because he thought he was protecting her by learning more about it just so he knew like the kind of evil in the world to guard against. And he accidentally created that fascination within her instead. So she, at some point, just decided she was going to be evil. The one scene she has on screen with him, it's like 2 seconds, and she kills him without a moment of hesitation or consideration. Like, he's not evil. He actually tells Lorraine about the tunnels underneath, and he even is like, takes out a gun like, oh, I failed as a father, I failed as a priest, hopefully I don't fail, and it's a hallucination in front of him that he sees of her. She slits his throat from behind. But there's no recognition, there's no like, you made me do this, or you left me no choice, or you never understood what power was. You know, there's nothing. There's nothing. The fact that she's his daughter is inconsequential to the greater story, other than the little bridge of like, oh, well, that's how she found out about the occult. Cool? She goes after Lorraine down in the tunnels. Ed and them have already pieced together because of like triangulation, like the girl who was hundreds of miles away. Oh, she actually went to college here, and that means that all three targets were within this square area. Oh, the occultist studying priest, there must be something there. So they realize, and they go after Lorraine to get there. You get to a scene then where Ed is possessed again in the tunnels, and he's swinging a sledgehammer going after Lorraine. And you've seen this trope before. You've seen it where it's he can't tell what he's swinging at, but he's trying to knock her head off, and she's like screaming like, no, Ed, I love you, remember who you are. All of these things. And they tie it back to some not as good as other films when they've talked about their relationship before. They connect it back to like their first date, essentially. And I said before how Ed's heart was like a really convenient thing, like when they want to use it. He's swinging a sledgehammer for like 5 minutes in tunnels, knocking out like support beams, hitting the wall. and his heart never gives out. Ever. Like, is it just that the demon is like, no, when I'm controlling you, your heart doesn't give out. Just like I can make bodies break and contort and twist in unnatural ways. And then when I'm not possessing that person, they have no health issues. They're not broken and crippled or dead. I guess, but it's just silly. So Lorraine backs up away from Ed, basically like, I can't run any further. You just have to believe. You just have to know and see. And she's like propped against the altar, which we're told the only way to break this curse, with the only lore we got in this film was a random book cited as like, hey, in the 1700s in the UK, witches were tried for doing this kind of curse. And oh, look at that. It happens to be exactly what this curse is. And we're told the only way the curse can be broken is by destroying the altar. And Lorraine is literally like leaned like against the altar, like laying on the ground, like her back kind of curved against it. And Ed is standing over her with a sledgehammer. The occultist is in the room. The cultist is just like hanging out in the corner. And I'm like, wouldn't she be sitting there like, don't swing that. Her head is literally under the lip of it. If you break the altar, everything's wrong. Like, drag her by the foot, 3 feet this way, and then club her over the head, Something like that. Something that doesn't destroy everything I'm trying to do here. Because I got to pay a hefty price if this goes through. If this fails. If this falls out. Nope. Ed remembers who he is. Clubs the altar with the sledgehammer once. It smashes to bits. The curse is broken. Arnie, who was trying to slit his throat again by way of being possessed in the infirmary while levitating and smashing out all the glass around him of the windows. He's fine. He's free. And the demon depossesses Ed, instead basically snaps the occultist in half and drags her to hell. This feels like a TV movie. This feels like if the Conjuring universe was turned into a miniseries that like aired on TV, this is what this film feels like. It's so absent of the lore. Like, you don't have haunted locations. I would have rather them gone back to Amityville, honestly. But you don't, even though that's Valak and that's already been explored a little bit. But you don't have these figures. You don't have these demons that you know a little bit about them, and there's world building to it. It's just like, there's somewhere out there a random Satanist occultist, and she's going after them because she needs to complete some sort of curse. And that's like the film. It's not great. It's very bare bones in its story. Like I said, you can only do so much with the Devil Made Me Do It case. So the end result is they have to make up something else completely separate, hundreds of miles away, send them there for like a quarter of the movie, and then turn it into just this like chase and mystery to find the occultist. But it's pretty bare bones. Like, I don't want to completely saddle this as like unwatchable, because it's not. It's just a step down from the first two installments. Like, it's the worst of the three, hands down. And I think you could tell that very early in the film. It's not going to be as robust. It has moments of tension, but never dread or anxiety like the first two films could build. It doesn't have anything that's really like unique or experiments in a way that's like, oh, well, that feels fresh. It doesn't have anything like that. Instead, it's just kind of a lot of tropes you've seen, a lot of unnecessary, inconsistent scares, and things of that nature. And, there's some good cinematography in there. There's a couple times where it has like a tracking shot from a drone where it starts outside the house and then it moves into the house, and it kind of tracks the people as they move through the scene and throughout the house. And it's like, that's a one long continuous shot. And as I was watching it, I thought, that's pretty good. Like, from a technical perspective, that's well done. I wonder if they'll be able to have more things like this. And that's early in the film, so I was still fairly optimistic at the time it could be good. And it just doesn't have a lot of that. Like, I want to give credit. It's not as bad as La Llorona. I guess I can give that. But that's a low bar. That's a pretty low bar. I think Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga do absolutely everything they can with a lackluster script. They're good, but like, no characters have development in this. The occultist, no name, no motive, almost no lines. And you don't even know the limits of her power. She's just a shell. She's a hollow character. Arnie gets some work, and his actor actually does a really good job trying to delve into everything. I'm going to butcher his name. Rory O'Connor actually does give a good performance, but I just don't think there's a whole lot to dig into. Everyone else just feels very two-dimensional. The Warrens are given a little bit of their history, and like I said, of the other two films that have addressed moments in their past and their marriage and their relationship before their marriage, those were more interesting and felt more heartfelt. This just felt kind of clunky to me. Like, oh, remember when we first met at the movie theater? You were taking my ticket, and then after the theater, we went on a walk in the rain. Or we went on a walk and it started raining, so we snuck under a gazebo and we stood there with each other until it stopped raining. Like, that's the memory. And I'm like, your other films explored this more interestingly. Like, those memories felt more important, like more moving than this one. It's a very uneven film, man. I don't know what else to say. It felt like little to work with in the first place, and it does little with it. Like, maybe even less than it could have done, which is not good. If I had to give this film a grade, I would say a C minus. I think it's watchable, but if you're watching it in any kind of comparison to the first two films, it's gonna fall flat. If you're watching it, however, in comparison to like Curse of La Llorona or one of these other decent Conjuring universe films, then it's okay. It's kind of like, and I remember seeing Chris Stuckman's initial review on it before it actually came out on HBO Max in theaters. Maybe being in theaters would help a little bit, help with the atmosphere, but I don't think there's any real scares in this film. I never felt that tension or dread that I felt in the first film or even the second film. But Stuckman said that it's essentially been said that like the Conjuring films are like horror movie fast food. I think that's a fair assessment here. I don't know what for the analogy, what I would say this one is. Is this like a Long John Silver's? Is this like some kind of lower tier fast food compared to the others being like a Whataburger or Five Guys or something like that? I don't know. I like the Conjuring universe. I'm glad it exists. The two first films I liked a lot. I liked the first film when I saw it, and then subsequent viewings I liked it a lot more. The second film I thought was great when I saw it in theaters, but subsequent viewings I've kind of just backed up a little bit, and I think like it's good, I like it, but it does feel a little crowded, a little bit Spider-Man 3-ish in the sense that it's like, oh, you have the old man spirit, you have Valak. Crooked Man is actually Valak, but like they're trying to make a Crooked Man film in the Conjuring universe as well, which means like kind of sort of not Valak or something. It's really unclear. But the point is, it's not a bad movie, as I channel my inner sheep, but it's certainly a far cry from what the others were, and what the bar was before. It comfortably walks underneath that bar, clears it completely without even having to crouch down. So that's all the time I got for this review, guys. If you haven't already, drop a like, leave a comment below, subscribe to Cheap Pop, and look for more content. I'm going to be doing a classic review series of the Showa-era Godzilla films, and I will also be delving into, on a rewatch, Godzilla vs. Kong as well. So look for that, and until next time, I'll see you later.